My name is Maeve McNamara, and I am currently a master's student and pre-service teacher at Columbia Teachers College in the program of Social Studies Education. And I am one student for whom edTPA is the highest of high-stakes assessment because it determines my future as an educator. I could talk at length about the issues I take with Pearson's involvement with this assessment and how I see it as a step in the corporate privatization of public education, but you've already heard that from Dr. Mataloni, and she explained it far more eloquently than I could. But the purpose of me being here today, I think, is to share my experiences with edTPA as a student and as a teacher. And I know that my experience is not unique. It's reflective of the struggles of many pre-service teachers who are currently completing edTPA. And I know this from the numerous conversations I've had with my colleagues at TC, some of whom are here today, but also people at other institutions. As a student, I have felt the effects of edTPA on my teacher education program. In addition to the over $600 that I have paid to Pearson in test fees, the time and money I have spent on my master's classes at TC is being largely devoted to edTPA prep. There are times that I feel like I'm getting a dual master's in the teaching of social studies and in preparing for edTPA. For example, this past Thursday, I spent the majority of a seminar class dissecting videos of myself and my classmates teaching. Now, as Kai said, I think that there is value absolutely in watching yourself teach, and especially watching with people who know you. You can break down what you're doing well and what you need to work on. But in this instance, we were not doing that. We were grading each other against edTPA rubrics. There's a huge push to pass edTPA, and at times I think that many of us feel so much pressure to do well in this assessment that we focus on just passing it first, just getting through it and doing what we need to do, and worrying about developing good methods of teaching second. Of course, we can't be any type of teacher until we pass. When edTPA is not the focus, there is so much room for creativity and development in my classes, for confronting real teaching dilemmas through meaningful reflection with people we know and trust. That's the reason that I attended Teachers College. I wanted to have those experiences, and I wanted to grow in that way. But those times are becoming less and less as the edTPA deadline looms. I do, however, feel very fortunate that I am at Teachers College, and we have extensive resources and faculty who are devoting countless hours of their own time to prepare us for this, time and resources that I feel could be much better spent in other ways. But at least I am at TC and I have that support. I have also spoken to people at institutions where that's not the case, and they are sort of doing this blind in a lot of ways. While edTPA has had a detrimental effect on my own education, what concerns me more is the detrimental effect I see it happening on my students. As a teacher, I have seen firsthand how invasive and exclusionary edTPA is in the classroom. First, it puts a strain on the student-teacher cooperating teacher relationship. This is already a complicated one to navigate for any of you who have been in either position at some time in your career. We do not have total freedom in the classroom. We're trying to balance the demands of our cooperating teacher, of our program, of edTPA, and of our own values as educators, which, as was stated before, we're developing. I know I am nowhere near an expert teacher. I'm learning, and I value that learning experience, and I feel that a lot of my potential for learning is being taken away and diverted to preparing for this assessment that's going to be graded by someone who has never even seen me or my students. As I was saying, well, I'd like to share an anecdote specifically of how the student-teacher, cooperating teacher relationship is being corrupted by edTPA. I'm fortunate my CT is extremely supportive of me in this endeavor, but I have friends and colleagues for whom that is not the case. A good friend of mine at TC has a cooperating teacher who has valid concerns about edTPA. He felt that his students were not yet ready to develop arguments based on evidence, which is a requirement of the edTPA portfolio. This was not because he had low expectations of his students, but because of his classroom context. The school is a semester-based institution, and so the students had just begun a new course, and he did not feel that it was the proper time to begin that type of assessment. But when the requirements became clear, he was upset because he didn't think it was the best course of action for his students. My friend had to push him to acquiesce to something that he was uncomfortable with in his own classroom. This caused a relationship that should be fostering learning and growth to become a place of conflict. This CT expressed that he would not have taken a student teacher this semester had he known the requirements of edTPA. And he has also expressed to her that he will not be taking student teachers in the future as long as edTPA remains a requirement for certification in the state of New York. It's hard enough for TC to find student teaching placements for everyone in our program, and edTPA is only making this more difficult. Many argue that edTPA will make us better teachers and more reflective teachers. I can tell you firsthand that it does neither. Instead, it is forcing me to become a selfish teacher. Because while I'm filming for edTPA, I'm balancing my concern for student learning with my worry for myself and the requirements I have to meet. I'm thinking about the camera. I'm thinking about the checklist of all the things that I have to squeeze into 2 consecutive 10-minute clips to prove to a stranger that I'm a good teacher and that I am making, and because of this, I'm making decisions based on my needs and not my students' needs. For example, yesterday I was filming my first day of edTPA lessons, and I had to regretfully tell one of my most engaging, insightful students that he could not participate, that he had to sit at the back of the class and remain silent because his mother had not given me permission to film him, something that was well within her rights as a parent and something that I would most likely do myself in the same situation. As the lesson progressed, I noticed that this student was not taking notes, he was not engaged. However, I could not even approach him to discuss this uncomfortable situation because my microphone was on. And were his voice to be heard, I would have to discard every good thing that was happening in my classroom at that time. Because I have striven to design good lessons for edTPA because I will not let my students' time be wasted. This was not the behavior of a good teacher, and it went against what I believed and my own philosophies, and frankly, I was ashamed of myself. One student might not matter to Pearson, to Scale, or to the state of New York, but that student matters to me when he's in my classroom and when he's outside of it. As we know, students learn best when they're engaging with material. But in instances like this, edTPA prevents some students from being fully engaged in classroom activities. This is especially true for group work or stations activities, because while teachers are filming their mandatory small group instruction video clips, students whose parents denied consent cannot participate. That is fundamentally inequitable and has no place in a public school. This experience made me feel dishonest as an educator, and that I was not living up to my goal of full inclusion for all students at all times. I know that everyone doing edTPA in the country must be encountering similar dilemmas. I know everyone in my program is. How many thousands of students are being excluded from meaningful instruction time because of this assessment and because of their parents' valid concern for issues of privacy? In the edTPA classroom, I am the center of attention. Contrary to the assertion that it is a student-centered assessment, it's not. It is absolutely teacher-centered. My students are little more than guinea pigs. Furthermore, it's completely an authentic representation of my teaching and of my students. When the camera is on, it's as if a voyeuristic third party is in the room, watching, judging, surveilling. I have tried to emphasize to my students that I am the one being evaluated, not them. However, many of my students of color come from communities that have historically been subjected to hyper-surveillance and policing, and the presence of the camera in their classroom only heightens their feeling of being watched and judged. We are all nervous and uncomfortable, and learning does not take place when you're either of those things. Now, I would like to stress the fact that I believe that being supervised and being observed is an integral part of learning to teach. But that role should be played by the field supervisor. The person who has watched me grow from September until now knows my students, knows my school context, and provides me with valuable feedback on how I can grow as an educator, which is incredibly lacking in the edTPA. I have stressed to my students the importance of this assessment to my future as an educator, and I know that because of this, they feel pressure to perform, as if their usual natural behavior and learning styles are somehow not good enough. Seeing how this pressure is affecting them and changing the dynamic between us only makes me feel more powerless and frustrated. It's bad enough that edTPA is diminishing my educational experience, but it's criminal that it's doing the same to theirs. They didn't sign up for this. They may have given their consent, but once I told them how important it was to me, there was no way they were going to let me down because I have a good, genuine rapport with my students and they know that I value them as individuals and their learning. But now because of the way that I had to treat that one student and exclude him, and I'm going to have to continue to exclude him for the next 3 days of instruction, I feel like I'm letting them down. For these reasons, amongst others, I believe that student teachers must raise their voices in this debate. We're the ones who are paying for this assessment. And so in the current neoliberal discourse, we are the consumers. And as we know, consumers are the ones with power. It's time to capitalize on that power. If we do nothing, teacher education programs will become nothing but test prep centers and classrooms the testing sites. Anyone who believes in the transformative power of public education knows that this cannot be allowed to happen and that there are alternatives. I do believe that it is crucial that the teaching profession have standards and benchmarks to prove to the people who claim that we are the failures in education that we are not, that we have high standards and that we value them. But this can be done in a way that does not include a corporatizing, privatizing institution such as Pearson. If you are a student teacher and you're interested in supporting us and our resistance to edTPA, I urge you to attend the breakout session later this afternoon with my colleague Rebecca Green and Melissa Howard to discuss ways forward in the current context of edTPA. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right.